Hello, malty moccasins. Yeah, I don't think I've had that as a malt mention before. And thank you to Drambam for the malt mention. I'm Ralphie. Welcome to the Whisky Bothy, somewhere in the middle of the Irish Sea, where I review whisky and have done for quite a long time now. And because of, I would say, my considerable amount of experience as an ordinary whisky fan. So I'm not a special nose, I'm not making any pretenses to be an expert. In fact, what I'm noticing, excuse me, I've got a runny nose, won't be a minute. I should have attended to this before I started the video. But I'm not claiming to be any sort of expert, and you've got to watch with experts because they will have a script. They have to be diplomatic, they have to be circumspect, and at times they will give an honest opinion, but they won't give a whole honest opinion. Do you know what I mean? Which is why the geeks and enthusiasts, although some people in the whisky industry do find us to be a considerable irritation, well, boo-hoo, here we are. We're selling whisky for the industry. A lot of it, an awful lot of it, particularly as times get tougher. And one of the reasons that we are useful is that we share our experience, and that's what I'm going to do now in Ralphie Review 1054 Extras. I'm going to share some of my experience, and it relates to a whisky I've just reviewed, which is a blended malt. And this is typical of an experience that you're going to have. If you've not already had this experience, you're going to have it. Basically, you start with whisky with, well, so a lot of people seem to start with Laphroaig, funnily enough, or Glenfiddich, two opposite ends of the single malt spectrum. And then 3 or 4 bottles in, the discussion crops up with other people who are interested in whisky, and then there's a realisation that, you know, what has the internet got to say, because the internet is now the first port of call for information, particularly as legacy media is increasingly shown to be disingenuous and at times completely, utterly fake. And this kind of rubs off because people wonder, who do you trust? Do you trust what's written in books? Do you trust what academics say? And this is one of the challenges in life. The skills we have to learn is not about trusting any particular person, but knowing what opinions to trust. If they are tangible, reasonable, if they are based in fact, if they're based in evidence, if they're based on experience and anecdotes, this is where we start to accumulate the information we need to take our hobby forward and our interests forward. So we start with, we're in the supermarket or someone's bought us a bottle of whisky, and then a year later we're sitting round the table on a Friday evening with friends and we're having a few drams and different bottles have been bought, and then someone brings something really unusual and you kind of hum and haw over it and you say, well, it's not as good as the Kalila and it's not as good as the Bruichladdich, but then there's a challenge set for the next meeting to have them blind. In other words, to have whisky in the glasses marked A, B, C, D, E and F, and you don't know what's actually in the glass. Therefore, you can only assess the whisky exclusively on its merits of smell and taste. Now, here's a little handy hint. Now, it's going to seem a little bit weird, but get onto eBay and buy yourself a red light bulb. All right? And in your whisky tasting room, in your little bothy or wherever you're whisky tasting, have a lampshade with the red light bulb in it, and keep the glasses covered, right, with a napkin so people can't see what's in the glass. And before you start nosing and tasting, switch all the main lights out and put the candles out. Well, you can leave the candles burning for atmosphere. It shouldn't be too bad, so long as they're not scented. And then put the red light on, because it means when you lift the napkins off the glasses, all the whiskies appear to be roughly the same colour. and therefore you cannot be guided by the colour of the whisky, whether it be natural colour, which you don't know, or synthetic added colour in the form of E150A, which you do not know. This levels the playing field. This is the point where you start to discover that some of these bottles that you don't recognise in the shop are actually really, really good and really worth buying. And furthermore, because there's not a lot of demand for them because people don't know what they are, the price tends to be better in relation to the quality. And this is what I'm going to focus on here. So I reviewed this. It's Timorous Beastie Cheese Cellar, 48% natural colour, unchill filter, plenty of mist in the glass. And when you nose it, it's not a fashionable style of whisky. Many modern whiskies, particularly from the big producers, they're bottled at 40%, chill filtered and have a caramel colourant added because unfortunately that is what the majority of the customers who buy that kind of product are looking for. They're looking for something safe because they're inexperienced with their palates, and generally people are lazy. People are very lazy. I'll give you illustrative examples of that. You walk into a supermarket and you see a dessert and it's called chocolate flavoured. Right? It's chocolate flavoured. And you buy it, say a chocolate trifle or a chocolate gâteau or and you're consuming it and you're asking yourself, I don't taste much chocolate. Where's the chocolate? Oh, right, well, it's chocolatey. But in fact, you're going entirely in the colour that they've put into that produce to make it brown. In other words, it's fulfilling your expectations of what you think the flavour would be. And to cut costs and get your cheap product even cheaper and to make the producers more profit, it's all about the money. Money, money, money. They can cut costs because flavour costs money. That's what it does. Costs money. So when they come, let's go back to whiskey now. So when the big corporations are selling the mainstream brands, they've got to sell safe versions which are not going to frighten the passive consumer and put them off from buying the brand again. That's why they bring the strength down. So they're paying less taxes, less duty, so they're able to make more profit when they have to substantially discount their product because otherwise it wouldn't sell. And that is definitely a phenomenon. So as we kind of get used to it, we've got to start at the beginning. Wherever we are on our whisky journey, we must start at the beginning. You can't just dive into cask strength independent bottlings because it will shock your senses. It'll utterly confuse you. But what you do is you start with the Glenfiddichs and the Laphroaigs and although that will shock your senses, but we know that. We know what to expect. And the Glenlivets and the Highland Parks, recently reblanded. Couldn't resist it. If you're a malt mate, you know what I'm talking about. Recently reblanded in its presentation. And you get these safe, generic products. And even when they're not particularly good, people continue to buy them as passive consumers because it fulfills expectations. Because any glass of whiskey is going to be a bit weird anyway. It's why you have it in a tumbler with ice. So you can actually taste it. But you can see in the new year, and if you happen to be having a Burns supper anywhere, or you're in a 5-star hotel bar somewhere in Singapore, and you want the pose and you want the bottle on the table, it's there and there you're, oh, look at me, I'm so brand aware. No, you look like a plonker. Right. So not that I would tell these people because, I'm highly, highly unlikely to ever be seen in those sorts of bars. But it's like, who on earth in their right mind would buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari these days? That they're plastic. Anyway, I don't want to get distracted here. We need to take our time and step it up in increments whilst continuing to challenge our palate. That's where the excitement and adventure is. When we discover our first independent bottling of Edredour, or official bottling of Edredour, because they're pretty good. When we get our first taste of Springbank, or if we can't get Springbank, we go full Colquhoun because it's the distillery next door. And it's very reasonably priced, and it's consistently great quality. This is why the OSWAs, the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, are so important. Because it gives the collective experience, the hive experience, the global collective hive experience, a portal to deliver that so that people getting into whisky can very quickly get their bearings and pick up the knowledge without too many mistakes that would just drive them away from buying any whisky ever again. And that does happen. So we're getting to the point now that we've got quite a number of years' experience under our belt. We go to the local specialist whisky shop, don't we? And you know you've got experience when the person behind the counter starts asking you for information because they've been brought in minimum wage to do the job and they don't know anything, and the boss just told them to sell the special. Right, the special, is basically what's going to give the boss the most markup. Or maybe his mate's the brand ambassador who bought him a meal, and gave him a little bit of a you-know-what. A bit of that. So that's this month's special. Here we go. It's this bland brand. So just plug it. Just sell it to whoever comes in. But anybody who's taken half an interest in their job, they can see there's so much more. And when the genuine characters, the people who really know about whisky, come into these specialist shops, they will latch onto this very, very quickly after a couple of minutes of conversation. At which point we start sharing our information with people in the trade. Now, they could go on to brand ambassadors' jobs. And I find it very, very heartwarming that certainly in Scotland, you have far more proactivity and intermingling now of whisky trade professionals in bars, in shops, in independent bottlers and small distilleries who are now mingling along with whisky club members, and they're picking up so much information so damn fast it beggars belief. This is the beginning of a movement, a zeitgeist, a phenomenon, and it's really coming to a head now because see, in 2025 it's going to be a tough year for everybody in the drinks industry. The wine industry is getting hammered at the moment, badly. And it's whisky's turn's coming up. And the distilleries that continue to sell are the ones who actually fundamentally connect with their customers in very simple, practical ways. One, they communicate. Two, they listen to the education they're getting from their own customers. Three, they know in these businesses that the whisky geeks aren't just a nuisance, but in fact are probably globally interconnected with other whisky clubs around the world and people who are working in bars, hotels, whisky shops. There's this fusion going on. It's very, very exciting. And when it happens, the specialist in the whisky shop will come across bottles like this and say, do you know what? We've got a wee sample bottle with this. Not a very big bottle, probably about something that size, but maybe smaller. And I say, let's just share it with the customer, with our select customers, our better customers, our regular shoppers, our loyal, engaged customers. Let's give them a wee taste, because see, taste and try before you buy. You can't do that with Amazon. You don't do that in Costco. You do not do that in the big stack retailers. They don't have the time. They don't have the motivation. They don't have the incentive. It's with the small specialist shops. And sure, the small specialist shops, proportionally their operational costs are higher. Therefore, they have to charge a bit more for the product. But so long as they're not ripping you off and so long as they're being honest and reasonable, it's worth paying that extra little premium for the access you get to information and knowledge about, for example, when the next release of Springbank's going to be, or is there a new independent bottling coming into the shop and the staff have tasted it and it's banger. This is the knowledge. Do you know what? We're way past the experts now. Whisky books have their place. They're orthodox, they're informative, and generally they're very well written by educated people who know their subject inside out. But the internet is absolutely where the zeitgeist and where the real energy is. And that is going to be sustained and continue to develop literally over the next 10 years. And the landscape of the global whisky industry in 10 years' time, I can see it. Where I'm sitting here in the bothy is going to be very different from what it is now, and it's going to be very exciting because it's what's happened to beer in the 1970s with the Real Ale campaign. That's exactly what's happening to whisky right now, and it's so exciting to be part of it, and you should be part of it too. Thank you for endorsement. Thank you for supporting my channel by viewing. You are my sponsors. I've just got to say this, and I'm going to say it's cheeky, but I'm going to say this anyway. This is the time of year, because I don't have any control over what ads go on to my videos, either at the beginning or at the end. There should be none at the middle, and if there are any ads in the middle, they're not there with my permission. I want you to know that. Seriously. But I tell you what, oh jeez, what was I going to say? I've completely gone. It's gone. It's winter time, and I'm getting a little bit of grey mist in my old grey cells. I think I should be exploring these peptides that people are talking about that boost your brain power. It's completely gone. Oh yeah, it's not gone. I now remembered. Here we go. See these adverts? See if they're for whisky brands, big corporate whisky brands. Do us a favour. Don't buy them.